Welcome everyone. So this is a tutorial session and today we will be learning diffusion process, like how to create structures from diffusion processes. So the model we will be using today is called the chameleon model, and you can give text inputs to this model, and what you will finally get output is a crystal structure or based on the text inputs that you have given. Okay, so before starting the model, before starting the notebook on how the model runs, let's try to see what the diffusion process in general is, a small recap of what you have done previously, and then we will gradually move on to the model. So diffusion process starts. Okay, so what happens in this process is your starting state is a random noise state. Okay, so imagine you have a random box with random atom types, okay, and random atomic positions. Okay, it's a random initialization, and you give a text input to the model. Okay, and this text input is what guides the denoising process. The denoising process is when you get a perfect crystal structure from this random noise. Okay, so what happens is you start with this random state, okay, and then there are multiple steps, maybe hundreds or thousands of steps of denoising, and finally what you get is a refined crystal structure. Okay, so what you get is this final structure where you get the perfect lattice. So what it matches is you will have lattice, atom type, and atom position. All these three were initially random in this initial state, but as the denoising process proceeded, it finally became refined, and then you have this structure. So how this model was trained is they use something called CLIP. CLIP is so this CLIP model was basically made so that you can get images from texts. So I mean we have all used models like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. There you can generate images just by text. And how is this process even possible? So what they do is they train image text pairs simultaneously, and the whole aim of this training is to build an association between the image and the paired text. So suppose you have a image of say a boy, and the corresponding associated text with this is boy. So this is your text vector, this is your image vector. What this CLIP does is project your text vector to a higher dimensional space, and in the same dimensional space you project your image vector also. So this is your t vector, this is your I vector. Okay, and what this CLIP will try to do is minimize this angle between them. So as we know that there is something called cosine similarity. So I mean if the dot product between two vectors is 1, then they are perfectly aligned to each other. If the dot product is -1, then they are perfectly misaligned. Okay, so when the CLIP is trained, what happens, the image and the text, they gradually align with each other, so that the vector of the embedding vector that comes out of this text boy and the image of this boy, both will finally coincide once the CLIP is trained. Okay, so CLIP is like a translator that is translating your language to this image that you are actually trying to generate finally. Okay, in the same sense we are dealing with crystals. So instead of image, what we are interested in is the crystal structure. Okay, so suppose you say that my initial text embedding, which is the user input, says I want to get a cubic SrMnO3. Suppose you want to generate this structure. So your text embedding, this input, this cubic SrMnO3, is converted into a vector which we will call the text embedding. Okay, and now what we want is from this text embedding can we get a refined crystal structure. Okay, and this process is gradually accomplished by this denoising process. So you start with a random initialized vector. This vector is your crystal in embedding space. Okay, and now as the denoising process proceeds, what happens is this vector finally tries to line up with this text embedding, and this becomes your final vector. And when the clip was trained, okay, so what it did was a crystal structure of SRMNO3 was given, and the description was given that this is the composition of SRMNO3, this is cubic in nature, and these two vectors were made to align during the training process itself. And let's look at one of the figures from the paper. Okay, so this is how they do. They take the crystal structure, they put it in a graph neural network, and what you get out of this is we will call the structure embedding or the graph embedding. And then you have a text description of this structure. So text description can be simple composition like LiMNO4, or it can be general text, a crystal structure of LiMNO4 with orthorhombic symmetry, and this text will be converted to a embedding, a text embedding. Now this box that you see, the diagonal elements, okay, are the pairs which are important, and the non-diagonal elements are the pairs which are mismatches. So if you have text 1 matches with graph 1, text 2 matches with graph 2, and this way what this is what constitutes the clip. And gradually as you train the clip, what happens is similarity between T1 and G1 starts to increase, and the dissimilarity between all other boxes, all non-diagonal boxes, that starts to reduce. And you will have a trained clip when you have the maximum similarity along the diagonal and maximum dissimilarity between the non-diagonal elements. Now, so this will align your text with your graph, and now when your clip is trained, you can use this to, like, in the denoising process of this diffusion. Okay, so we will go to our notebook demonstration. So this notebook I'm running on Google Colab. You can run notebooks locally. This model is a heavy model and requires some GPU to run. So it's recommended that you run it in Colab, or if you have a good GPU configuration in your machine, you can run it locally also. Okay. So step 1 would be installation. All these blocks takes a lot of time to run, so I pre-run them. Okay, and I will demonstrate what each block does. Okay. So first you install. Okay, and once you have installed it, you have to import. So we are importing this package called Chameleon. Okay, there is something called a visualizer which will help us to visualize the structures we have generated. We will be using atomic simulation environment AAC to convert the structures to desired formats we need. Okay, and we will import the operating system and pickle. So pickle is a file format that can store entire objects in a format for that is suitable for Python. Okay, so first we will see the composition model. Okay, so what you do in the so first you load the composition model. Okay, and then what comes is the generation parameters. What we see here, n samples equals to 2. Okay, so n samples will say how many structures you want to generate. Okay, in this generation process, as many structures as you say, you can give n samples equals to 10. At each denoising means it will perform 10 types of denoising process and generate 10 different kinds of structure. Okay, and the fact that they will not all collapse to the same structure is because in this denoising process there are steps in between where a little bit of random noise is also added between subsequent steps, and this prevents all the final denoise structure to fall to the same minima. Okay, same minima has been same crystal structure. So if the more samples you generate, you can get more different number of structures for the same composition. Okay, n atoms is a rough approximate of the number of atoms you want in your structure. These numbers, although we specify, the numbers may not be exact, okay, depending on the type of generation process it undergoes, but it's roughly around that. And in this example, we want to generate a system which contains lithium, phosphorus and sulfur. Since this is a composition model, only thing we need to specify is actually the composition and nothing else. Okay, so it's lithium, phosphorus and sulfur. And now we will try to generate the structure. Okay, so so the generating structure comes from this line. So atom list is where it's a list of list. Okay, and from here we will be storing all the structures that get generated. So we are generating 2, this will be stored in that atom list, and here we are like calling the model composition model. Okay, and the input to the model is the prompt, the atoms and the samples. So the prompt, our prompt was LIPS, n atoms. We saw that n atoms was 8 and n samples is 2. Okay, so now once you run this block, it starts to generate. So it has generated, as you run it, you will see that it has generated structure 1, okay, which is Li2P2S4, and this is another structure which is Li2P2S4. Same stoichiometry it has generated, but what's different is that you can see the cell volume here is 181 and the cell volume here is 151. Okay, so it's the same stoichiometry, same number of atoms, but it's 2 different crystal structures that has been generated. Okay, now suppose we want to visualize these structures. Okay, so as I was telling, the structures are generated as stored as lists in this atom list. Okay, and then you can like finally take each one out and see it. So what we do is, so we initialize the visualizer with this atom list. Okay, and then index. So index will tell which structure you are trying to parse. So index 0 means I am trying to parse the first structure, index 1 would mean I am trying to parse the second structure. So it's given index 0. So this is the compound that it generated, okay, of LIPS. So this purple one is lithium, this yellow one is sulfur, and this orange one is phosphorus. Okay, similarly if you do index 1 here, you can see the other structure that it generated. Okay, so had I had given n samples equals to 10, you could have viewed up to index 9 here. Okay, I mean all are loaded in this visualizer. Now once you have these structures, what you can do is this block of code will actually save your structures in CIF format, or a pickle format. It will save in both format. Okay, and you can use this CIF format and pickle format for doing further analysis. Now what you can try as exercise is, for various applications you have various compounds. So what you can try is give these stoichiometries, give these compositions and try with various number of atoms to see what all structures that you are able to generate. Okay, and now let's move on to the second part of the model, which is the guided generation with natural language. Okay, the general text model, we can give inputs which can have chemical composition, crystal symmetry, materials properties or structure type. So let's try that. So yeah, so first we load the general model. So this line chameleon dot load general text model, this will load the other model which is not the compositions model, it's called the general text model. And once you have loaded this, okay, we will try to give n samples, n atoms and prompt same as before. So the prompt here is, so suppose we want to generate a structure with n samples 3, we want to generate 3 structures, each having say 56 atoms, and the text input is a crystal structure of LiMn2O4 with cubic symmetry. And now just like before, we start the generation process. Okay, and once you start generating, once you have done with the generating process, you will see you will have 3 structures generated here. Okay, and the stoichiometry is little different from all of them, like Li7Mn15O34, Li7Mn16O33, Li7Mn16O33, but these two have different lattice parameters, little bit difference in lattice parameters you can observe in them. Okay, and just like before, we can again visualize these structures. Okay, so again index 0 we are visualizing here. Since we have generated 3 structures, you can see from index 0, index 1 and index 2. Okay, and you can also toggle with this atom and see how it is. Okay, once we have generated the structure, we can now we can also save it like before. Okay, and now we will see like try to visualize how the diffusion process is happening. I mean, what we saw was we gave a prompt, okay, and we saw the final structure, but what was happening in between those steps, like we are trying to visualize the diffusion denoising steps. Okay, so this we will call the trajectory. Okay, I mean the initial point, the final point, and whatever in between is called the trajectory. And now you run this block, and what happens is during the generation process, all your trajectories are stored. Okay, I mean for each step of the denoising process, the structure is stored. Now what we can do is we can animate this process. Okay, and resolution, so we ran diffusion for 1000 steps. Okay, and for each 10 steps one structure was stored. Okay, and now what will happen is if we try to play it, okay, so this we will see as the evolution of the structure. It will go up to 100, t equals to 100, because it's printing at every 10 steps how the process is actually evolving. Okay, and as you see, you started from a black blob, and now it's you can see colored atoms and each occupying specific positions. Okay, and as you saturate towards t equals to 100, you will see the structure stabilizing. Okay, that's when you know that the denoising process has been successful, and the text embedding that you gave as input and the initial noise vector, they have actually aligned to the best possible way they could have using this pre-trained model. Okay, so as an exercise, you can try out different structures, different number of samples, and visualize them. Okay, and since we have done previously trained models like Align, which can directly predict formation energy, band gap, or bulk modulus, what you can do is give these structures to Align and find those. Okay, what are the formation energies of the structure, band gap, or bulk modulus, or any other properties which you have pre-trained your Align on. Okay, or you can do a more rigorous DFT calculations using VASP or quantum espresso. Okay, and you can do structure analysis. Okay, like what is the space group of this structure, okay, what is the coordination environment, and everything using packages like PyMatGen or AAC. Okay, so there are some exercises for you to try. Okay, and the thing is, here are some debugging steps in case you have some problem in running the model. Okay, and at the end of the notebook you will find the paper link for which you can run it, from where you can actually get the model. Okay, so that was all about this lecture, so I will summarize once. Okay, so diffusion models provides a powerful way to explore chemical space. Text guidance allows precise control over generated structure, and you can always validate this generated structure by using any of this machine learned property predictors or by DFT calculation. Okay, and the thing is, sometimes generation process may not give you desired structure or sensible structures. In that case, it is recommended that you generate multiple number of structures, and some of them will might make sense. Okay, so yeah, so that concludes to the end of this lecture on hands-on tutorial of diffusion process. Thank you.